to go to filmmaker.
Just give me some sort of a summer job, and then you'll really be starting my career.
Do I have a summer job to give you? Only in Judaism, I think. Shalom Aleichem Malachei Hashar. Hello.
I am subbing for Matt.
You are subbing for Matt after I put his name everywhere. Okay.
Is the kiddish cup here?
No, there's no kid here, so you don't have to worry about it. You just got no kid, yes. Yes. Well, let me just see announcements.
Does the mess cover my delight?
Yes. I think your body language gave it away quite clearly. Tina DeGan. Okay. Why is this like this?
Sounds good. Is there some reverb on Sounds good.
Check. Hey, hey.
Are you going to be playing on the piano?
Yes.
Okay.
Check. Hey.
Why is this light not working? Oh. So this thing keeps falling. Thank you. This mic. This needs to be louder. Check, check. 1, 2. Testing 1, 2. Check, check. 1, 2, 1, 2.
Joel, you ready? And can I do a quick count? 10, 9, 8. Am I okay? Am I good on sound?
Yeah. Oh.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. Thank you. Tonight we gather for both Shabbat and for also an evening of remembrance. Just a few days ago, we honored Yom HaShoah Gevurah, the holy day that honors the martyrs and the heroes of the Holocaust. The idea of honoring these people began in 1955 when the Knesset said, we must remember and we must honor. And 4 years later, Prime Minister David Ben-Gurion and President Yitzhak Ben-Zvi, they signed into law this day. Originally, it was the day before Passover, but we were all busy the day before Passover. And they realized it wasn't the most opportune time to have a remembrance. So they moved it to 8 days prior to Yom HaAtzmaut, connecting forever, well, our memories of loss, our memories of struggle, our memories of heroism with Israeli Independence Day. I'm going to take a moment, or in a few moments, I'm going to be lighting a yellow candle. And as I light this yellow candle, we remember all those who had to wear yellow Jewish stars. And while they were forced to wear them as a sign of who they also wore them proudly. Because whenever we place a Jewish star upon our clothing or upon our bodies, we do so with pride. So please join me right now on page 521. And we're going to begin with the reading. If you would like, you can join me in this reading. We begin with silence. The silence of death, the silence after destruction. There are times when songs falter, when darkness fills life, when martyrdom becomes a constellation of faith against the unrelieved black of space about us. There are no words to reach beyond the edge of night, no messenger to tell the full tale. There is only silence. The silence of Job, the silence of the 6 million, the silence of memory. Let us remember them as we sing, as we align our silences together. I'm on page 522. We kindle these lights in memory of the 6 million Jews murdered by the Nazis and their collaborators. May the memory of the righteous be for a blessing. Zikronam livracha. I'm going to ask you all to come forward, for we have 2 trays of yellow candles. And I'd like everyone to come forward silently as Joel leads us in Shalom Aleichem, to come forward and begin to light these yellow candles of remembrance on either side.
Shalom Aleichem, Malachi Hasharet, Malachi Elyon, Mi Melech Malchei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem leshalom, Malachi Hashalom, Malachi Elyon. Mi Melech Malchei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Barechuni leshalom, Malachi Hashalom, Malachi Elyon. Mi Melech Malachi Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzirchem leshalom, Malachi Hashalom, Malachi Elyon. Mi Melech Malchei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. בואכם לשלום, מלאכי השלום, מלאכי עליון. מי מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא. עצרם לשלום, מלאכי השלום, מלאכי עליון. מי מלך מלאכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא. צריכם לשלום, מלאכי השלום, מלאכי עליון. מי מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא.
Let us turn to page 524 in our books for a poem by Primo Levi. You who live secure in your warm houses, who return at evening to find hot food and friendly faces, consider whether this is a man who labors in the mud, who knows no peace, who fights for a crust of bread, who dies at a yes or a no. Consider whether this is a woman without hair or name, with no more strength to remember, eyes empty and womb cold as a frog in winter. Consider that this has been. I commend these words to you. Engrave them on your hearts when you are in your house, when you walk on your way, when you go to bed, and when you rise up. Repeat them to your children, or may your house crumble. Disease render you powerless. Your offspring avert their faces from you. We turn to page 138 for some Shabbat right now. And on page 138, you'll find L'cha Dodi. And as we sing L'cha Dodi, we need to remember that no matter where we find ourselves, well, Shabbat will always appear and bless us. And Shabbat was celebrated in the darkest of times in concentration camps. It was celebrated and honored. And perhaps with just a whisper, perhaps with just a gentle reminder. But Shabbat came and blessed all of those who were suffering, who were in need, all those who needed and desired Shabbat. Shalom Aleichem, page 138. We'll be doing verses 1, 2, 5, and 9, rising on verse 9.
Lecha dodi likrat kala, Bnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala, Bnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi, Lecha dodi likrat kala, Bnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala, Bnei Shabbat nekabela. Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad, Ishmi'anu el ha'meuchad, Adonai echad u'shemo echad, L'shem ultiferet v'litzilah. Lecha dodi, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לקראת שבת לכו ונלכה, כי מקור הברכה מראש מקדם נסוכה, סוף מעשה במחשבה תחילה. לך דודי, לך דודי לקראת כלה, בני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, בני שבת נקבלה. התעוררי, התעוררי, כי באורך קומי אורי, אורי אורי, שיר דברי, כבוד אדוני עלייך נגלה. לך דודי, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. בואי ושלום עטרת בעלה, גם בשמחה ובצוהלה, תוך אמוני עם סגולה. בואי חלה, בואי חלה. לך דודי, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה.
You may be seated. I'm going to ask the following individuals to come forward to light our Shabbat candles. If you're a survivor of the Holocaust, a child of a survivor, the grandchild of a survivor, or even the great-grandchild of a survivor, I'd like you to come forward tonight to help us light our candles. So please come forward. Joel, why don't you move everybody up to the table? Before the candles are lit, I'm on page 526, a poem by Franta Bass, age 14, when this child was in Terezin. I'm a Jew and will be a Jew forever. Even if I should die from hunger, never will I submit. I will always fight for my people on my honor. I will never be ashamed of them. I give my word. I am proud of my people, how dignified they are. Even if I am suppressed, I will always come back to life. And as we light these Shabbat candles, may these words ring in our ears, the strength of being Jewish, the strength of belief, the strength of coming together.
Lai la lai da dai, yai dai 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 dai. Lai dai 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 dai. Lai dai 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 dai. Lai dai 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 dai. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav V'tzivanu lehadlik ner V'tzivanu lehadlik ner V'tzivanu lehadlik ner Shel Shabbat.
Thank you all for coming forward tonight and lighting our Shabbat candles. We turn to page 146 for the Baruch. The Baruch is our call to worship, our call to say we are ready to be part of a Jewish community. It is the call to remind us to pray together, to come together, to be together. The call to remind us of the importance of Judaism. So we turn to page 146, and if we are able, we rise. So please, if you're able, page 146.
Lai 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 Lai, 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 lai. Baruchu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach. HaMevorach leolam va'ed HaMevorach leolam va'ed.
Please remain standing. In a moment we will say the Shema together. If the prophets broke in through the doors of night and sought an ear like a homeland, ear of mankind overgrown with nettles, would you hear? If the voice of the prophets blew on flutes made of murdered children's bones and exhaled airs burnt with martyrs' cries, if they built a bridge of old men's dying groans, ear of mankind occupied with small sounds, would you hear? Hear, Shema. Do we really hear the plight of those who are in need? This poem speaks about, the period of the Holocaust. But each day there's a travesty and a tragedy that occurs in this world. Do we hear? Do we hear the cries of others? For we must, if we want to remember those who both were heroes and martyrs of the Holocaust. And now let's take a moment and cover our eyes to truly see if we hear others as we sing the Shema.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod, Shem Kevod, Malchuto, Leolam Vaed.
Be seated. We continue with the Vahafta found on page 154, the Vahafta.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
158 for Micha Mocha. When you walked in the sanctuary tonight, you might have noticed we only have 2 Torahs displayed, not 5. And our Torahs that are on display are our Holocaust Torahs. And I usually speak about these every Yom Kippur. But I'd like to point them out tonight because these are 2 Torahs that survived, and now they thrive. They're 2 Torahs that come out of the Czechoslovakian region, and they were taken by the Nazis and they were put into a warehouse, and after the war they were under Polish control, and the Jews of Britain came and said, "We'd like our Torahs, please. They belong to the Jewish people." And the Poles would not release them. We had to pay for over 1,500 Torahs to be returned to us. And so we paid. And they were sent to the Holocaust Memorial Trust in England, and they reconditioned many of these Torahs, and some of them were too old to be reconditioned. And they sent them around the world, and we ended up with 2 of them. Torahs to remind us that even in the most difficult times, Jews survive, and then they move on, and then they thrive. And one of these Torahs is over 250 years old. The other is probably about 90 to 100. But the Torah from Brno, 250 years. That's before the American Revolution of 1776. So they look over us tonight. They watch over us. They're present for us tonight. And our other 2 Torahs are on the side, honoring them just like we honor them. And then one of our Torahs is at home with a bat mitzvah who will be here tomorrow morning because, as many of you know, we give a Torah a few days prior to a bar bat mitzvah to a child for them to protect and for them to hold on to. So if you'd like to learn more about our Holocaust Torahs, go to our homepage. There's a 10-minute documentary on the Brno Torah that you should watch and learn something about its history. So we're going to rise, we're not going to rise, it's the Micha Mocha. We are going to turn to the Micha Mocha on page 158. And we talk about that long journey, that journey out of slavery to freedom. And that's similar to the Torahs we have. That's a journey they took. They had to be imprisoned in a warehouse. They had to be forgotten about by the Jewish people who, well, they didn't forget, but the Jewish people who died in their communities, who couldn't use them any longer. And then finally other Jews came and released them, freed them, took them to a place where they could once again be read and celebrated. So the Michamocha, and that sea they crossed, is as difficult as any sea that the Israelites crossed. Page 158.
מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נהדר בקודש, נורא תהילות אוסף אלה, נורא תהילות אוסף אלה. מלכותך ראו בניך בוקי הים לפני משה ומרים, זה אלי ענו ואמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נהדר בקודש, נורא תהילות אוסף אלה, נורא תהילות אוסף אלה.
Let us turn to page 161, and let's read the English at the bottom of the page as a way to introduce Hashkivenu, found on page 160. The bottom of 161. Give us a place to rest, Adonai, our God. Bring us into shelter in the soft, long evening shadows of your truth. For with you are true protection and safety, and in your presence are acceptable and gentle love. Watch over us as we go forth. Prepare for us as we return. Spread over us your shelter of peace, over all we love, over our Jerusalem and yours. Baruch atah Adonai, hapores sukat shalom aleinu v'al kol am Yisrael v'al Yerushalayim. Page 160, Hashkivenu.
השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום, והעמידנו שומרנו לחיים. השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום, והעמידנו שומרנו לחיים. ושמור צאתנו ובואנו לחיים ושלום מעתה ועד עולם. השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום, והעמידנו שומרנו לחיים. השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום, והעמידנו שומרנו לחיים.
We turn to page 371 for the Misha Berach prayer. We say the Misha Berach for those who are ill of mind, body, spirit. Tonight on our Misha Berach list, Abby Rapport, Janet Blake, Pam Branner, Lynn Newman, Susie Newborn, Sharon Friedman, Diana Carew, Jeff Borwitz, Mark Mann, Erwin Ames, Daryl LaValle, Jeffrey Albaum, Baylor Robinson, Ed Edelson, Mark Jeff Stickler, Leanne Rosenberg, Hillel Baldwin, Macheli Wetley, Dell and Hank Laufenberg, Trish Santana, Un-Ho Lee, David Berger, the Ray family, Dory Glazer, Brad Stone, Mike Brenner, Glenn Martin. And we also think of those affected by acts of anti-Semitism and bigotry, those suffering in the Ukraine, those injured due to border challenges, those healing from all too frequent gun violence, those affected by terrorist attacks and environmental challenges, and all those caring for the ill. If you have an additional name for our Misha Barak list, share it with me now. Mishaber Kavatenu Vimatenu. May the God of our ancestors grant a refuah shlema, a complete and full healing to all those named this evening, and to all those we hold in our hearts. And together we say the singing of Mishaberach.
Mishaberach Avotenu Mekor habracha leimotenu. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Misheberach imotenu mekor habracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shelema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen.
Viktor Frankl wrote, one evening when we were already resting on the floor of our hut, dead tired, soup bowls in hand, a fellow prisoner rushed in and asked us to run out to the assembly grounds and see the wonderful sunset. Standing outside, we saw sinister clouds in the west and the whole sky alive with clouds of ever-changing shapes and colors, from steel blue to blood red. The desolate gray mud huts provided a sharp contrast, while the puddles on the muddy ground reflected the glowing sky. Then, after minutes of moving silence, one prisoner said to another, "How beautiful the world could be." Let us rise for the Amidah. We are on page 164. Please rise if you're able and face the ark.
Adonai sifatai tiftach ufi agid tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu ve'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, ve'Elohei Leah. Ha'el hagadol, hagibor ve'hanora, El Elyon, gomel chasadim tovim, ve'koneh hakol, ve'zocher chasdei avot ve'imahot, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה. מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם בעזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיה הכל אתה, רב להושיע, מוריד הטל, מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיה הכל ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומי דומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה להחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיה הכל. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלה. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש.
We turn to page 554 for a Yom HaShoah insert, the Hoda'ah insert for Yom HaShoah. Page 554. Let us read the English together. Merciful parent who dwells on high, in your great mercy remember in mercy your upright, blameless, and deserving children and their holy communities that were destroyed in their great numbers in the Holocaust. Their lives were taken as they honored your name. Beloved and precious in life, even death cannot separate them from us. May God remember them for goodness along with all the world's righteous. And let us say, Amen. Am Yisrael Chai. You can turn back to page 170 if you'd like to pray silently. But what I will be doing is timing 2 minutes. Because at 10 a.m. on Yom HaShoah in all of Israel, they stop wherever they are, every citizen. And a horn blasts for 2 full minutes. And if you're driving in a car on a freeway, you stop your car and you step outside of it. If you're in the middle of a crosswalk, you stop. If you're eating a slice of pizza, you stop and stand. And if you've ever been in Israel for this experience, it's quite moving to see a whole nation remember simultaneously. And so I'm going to be timing 2 minutes, and I will let you know when those 2 minutes end. So even if you're done with your silent prayer before, please remain standing until I let you know when this 2-minute period is over. So feel free, your own thoughts or the actual Amidah starting on 170 to 180. Oseh shalom b'romav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'al kol yoshvei tevel v'yimru. Amen. You may be seated.
I would like to sing a song that can be found in your Siddur on page 643. It is called Gesher Tsar Meod. The translation is, the entire world is but a narrow bridge. The most important thing is not to be afraid. Please join me if you know it. Kol haolam kulo gesher tsar meod, gesher tsar meod, gesher tsar meod. Kol haolam kulo gesher tsar meod, gesher tsar meod. והעיקר, והעיקר, לא לפחד, לא לפחד כלל. והעיקר, והעיקר, לא לפחד כלל. כל העולם כולו גשר צר מאוד, גשר צר מאוד, גשר צר מאוד. כל העולם כולו גשר צר מאוד, גשר צר מאוד. והעיקר, והעיקר, לא לפחד, לא לפחד כלל. והעיקר, והעיקר, לא לפחד כלל. It gives me great pleasure to introduce tonight's guest speaker to you all. Not only because she's a fascinating woman, but also because she's my mom. Miriam Lehmann Stein was born in Bolivia and grew up in Peru, where her family was involved in the Jewish community since their arrival there in 1954. She's the daughter of Holocaust survivors, my grandparents, who managed to get out of Germany in 1939, which was pretty late year to escape. My grandparents didn't know each other in Germany. They met in Bolivia, to where they each managed to escape the horrors of the Holocaust. Eventually, the family moved to Peru when Miriam was 5 years old. In Peru, my mom attended the Jewish day school in Lima, which is the same Jewish day school that I attended as a young boy. For the past decade, my mom has been doing genealogy in order to find the many branches of our family tree that were broken by the Holocaust. In the past 10 years, sorry, I'm getting emotional here. In the past 10 years or so, my mom has found dozens of close cousins whom we didn't know existed. Cousins in Washington, D.C., my hometown, in Paris, cousins in Sydney, Australia, and even several cousins here in LA. My mom has single-handedly reconnected our large extended family, all of whose parents and grandparents were forced to flee Germany during the Holocaust. Of course, several members of our family never made it out of Europe and were murdered by the Nazis. My parents' temple on the East Coast recently asked Miriam to give a 90-minute presentation on Zoom about our family's ordeal during the Holocaust and their new and sudden life in South America. When I found out that she was doing this, I told Rabbi John about it, and we decided we needed to have Miriam speak here at Kol Tikva for our Yom HaShoah Shabbat, since my parents were going to be visiting at this time. Tonight, you will hear a small excerpt from my mom's longer presentation. Stephanie Elkins, our outreach coordinator, and I are working on bringing you my mom's full presentation on Zoom sometime in the future. So stay tuned for that. Please give a warm welcome to my mom, Dr. Miriam Lehman Stein. And just give us a second to set up her little slideshow here. Take it off? Okay, yeah. John, turn that one on if you don't mind.
Hello, hello, no.
It's pretty quiet. Get it louder. Can you use my mic? I think my mic's louder. Let's just use mine. Thanks for your patience.
Yes, can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. Good evening, everyone, and Shabbat Shalom. Thanks, Rabbi John and Joel and Temple Kol Tikva for giving me this opportunity to tell you a little about my family during the Holocaust, their escape to Bolivia, and a bit about my growing up Jewish in Peru. I would like to make clear that this presentation is about my own experiences and that of my family alone. When my family arrived in Lima, Peru in 1954, and you see the map there in green, there were approximately 4,000 Jews in the country. Almost 3,000 lived in Lima, the capital. When we arrived there, there was an already well-established Jewish community in Lima. By contrast, my family, my parents, were starting anew, once again, in their lives. Where did we come from? What happened? In order to understand that, we need to go back in time and place. Like Joel said, my parents didn't know each other in Germany. They actually came from very different regions in Germany. My dad had grown up in Berlin, and my mom near Breslau, in a little town called Zimmerau in Silesia. And you can see Berlin in the yellow bigger dot, and Silesia is at the bottom of the green. Breslau was in Germany at the time, but it is called Wrocław today in Poland. My father grew up in an apartment on this street in Berlin. My mom, on the contrary, grew up on a big farm. That's my mom in the back with my grandparents in the front, with an inn. This is the original picture of the inn, and they had a house that we don't have a picture of. I think it's not up anymore, but the inn still exists, and it was remodeled. After the Nazis came to power, they forced my grandparents to sell the farm for literally pennies to some Poles in 1936. My grandparents became completely destitute. A synagogue put them up in a small apartment in Breslau. My father was an accountant at a Jewish-owned company in Berlin. As he approached his office building on the morning of November 10, 1938, after Kristallnacht, or the Night of Broken Glass, A non-Jewish colleague came running out to alert him that the Gestapo was arresting all the Jews inside and that he should go back home. Since he couldn't go home for fear of being arrested, he and his father stayed at their British neighbor's apartment. These neighbors were kind enough to hide them for at least a week. All the synagogues had burned on the night of broken glass, including the beautiful synagogue on Fasanenstrasse that you see there, where my dad had done his bar mitzvah under the Reformed Rabbi Leo Beck. And this is the same synagogue after Kristallnacht. After Kristallnacht, my dad tried to get a visa for both himself and his parents to get out of Germany. But a cousin in France managed to send him only one visa for Bolivia. My father said goodbye to his parents in Hamburg, very aware that he might never see them again. My grandfather, a dentist who had lost his practice by then, was reported to Theresienstadt, where he was used as a medic, and that's the Theresian transportation car. He was marched to Auschwitz and murdered 6 months before liberation. My grandmother committed suicide to avoid being deported. My grandfather's brother, who was a Supreme Court justice in Berlin, was deported to Auschwitz and murdered there. My father took the last ship to South America before the war, in 1939, and disembarked in Arica, which was Chile's northern port. And you can see Arica right at the top of Chile and at the bottom of Peru, really, but it belongs to Chile. The Chileans did not let my dad and other Jews stay in Chile and sent them off by train to La Paz, Bolivia. And you cannot see the mountains, but they had to go pretty high. The train ride to La Paz was almost deadly for my dad. La Paz is the highest capital in the world. It sits at an altitude of 12,000 feet. He barely made it. He was so sick during the train ride that he arrived very sick in La Paz. He was sick for 3 weeks. Volunteers in a Jewish organization that gave shelter and took care of the Jewish refugees from Nazi Germany helped him get back on his feet. Once recovered, my father started working at a restaurant in La Paz as a hat and coat check person. He didn't know any Spanish, so he started learning Spanish during the day. He had to actually serve him. They became friends, and then my dad accompanied my mom home every day. They talked about their difficult experiences in Germany, their worry about their family left behind, and their own narrow escape from Germany and from the Nazis in 1939. At the time of Kristallnacht in Germany, my mother was working at the Jewish hospital in Breslau, in Silesia, as a dietitian. This hospital also treated non-Jews, which is probably the only reason it was still standing. On Kristallnacht, her father and her 2 brothers were arrested and sent to Buchenwald concentration camp in Germany. Several months after their arrest, my grandmother, my Omi, went to the Gestapo and begged for their release with my grandfather's Iron Cross. He had earned the Iron Cross while fighting for Germany for 4 years in World War I. At first, my grandmother was also imprisoned for a few days, but then a somewhat humane German officer released her, released also my grandfather and my uncles. My mother then hid her brothers in the Jewish hospital in Breslau, where she worked until they got visas for Bolivia. A cousin who had fled to La Paz early and had good connections there, because he was a chess champion, sent my mother and 40 members of her family visas for Bolivia. She was finally able to leave Breslau in 1939 for Hamburg, Arica, and La Paz. My mom's parents eventually got out of Germany in 1940, and you can see here their passport issued by the Nazis with the middle names Sarah and Israel. They went on a ship, the Horatio, that shipped from Genoa, Italy, to Valparaiso, Chile, a few months before Italy joined the Nazis in World War II. The Horatio suffered an explosion and caught fire in the Mediterranean. My grandparents were able to survive unharmed and get rescued by French ships because they were in the second class of the ship. The first class caught fire and passengers there got injured but also survived. My grandparents arrived in Arica on another ship after being taken back to Genoa, first to catch that second ship. They were the last of my mom's immediate family to arrive in La Paz, Bolivia. After my dad and my mom became friends and dated for a while in La Paz, they got married on September 19, 1941. My dad wore a suit that had a hole in the front of the jacket, and so the tailor took a piece of material from the tush of the pants and patched up the hole. He then patched the behind with a different material. My dad just wasn't allowed to bend down. My mom wore a black dress that was the only nice dress she possessed, and you can see that in the picture. All of my mom's family was at the wedding, but none of my dad's, because they either got deported and murdered by the Nazis, or they were able to get out of Germany before they would have been deported, but didn't go to Bolivia. My dad's two sisters were able to escape Berlin to Great Britain. My sister and I were born in La Paz at home. I was born on Bolivia's Independence Day. That's the flag. My mother's brother, a physician and a musician, was supposed to deliver me, but after escaping the Holocaust in 1939, in order to earn a living in La Paz at the beginning, he formed a band. That's where Joel most likely got his musical talent from. My one uncle is on the left with a saxophone, and he is actually my cousin who is here, my cousin's grandfather. And the other uncle is in the middle with the drums. On Independence Day, my uncle and his brother were playing at the Government Palace in La Paz, and my aunt and another doctor had to deliver me. Times were hard in Bolivia. My parents lived in a small place with a whole extended family. My mom cooked for everyone on a Primus stove before going to work to the restaurant. No one else would touch that Primus for fear that it could possibly explode. In addition, the altitude, lack of sanitation, lack of medicines created for a very difficult environment. 2 of my cousins died of typhoid and dysentery, respectively, and I almost died of diphtheria. My aunt died during childbirth, so my mom had to nurse my newborn cousin as well as my sister, who was born a month earlier. Regular milk was just not safe enough, and baby formula was non-existent. After some small jobs in La Paz, my dad started working as an accountant in a mining company owned by the Hochschild Foundation, which dealt in trading tin ore. It's important to know, and this is Moritz Hochschild in the picture, that Moritz Hochschild rescued a lot of Jews from the Holocaust. After his death, they found letters that indicate that he might have rescued as much as 9,000 Jews. He was called the Schindler of South America by the media. In total, about 20,000 Jews escaped the Shoah to Bolivia. And there is a book called Hotel Bolivia, because they all went through Bolivia and not everybody stayed. Later in La Paz, my parents rented an apartment in a house that had belonged to an amateur archaeologist named Artur Poznański. Poznański's house, we were in this house in the middle, on the left side, in the middle apartment. Poznański's house had been his museum before his death in 1946. And our apartment had a long hallway with huge stone heads sticking out from the walls, similar to the stone heads you see in the picture. My mom set up a bakery in the back of the apartment. Since my grandparents lived with us, my grandfather delivered the cakes and pastries to stores. My grandfather died when I was a year old, so I knew only my grandmother, my Omi, who took care of me while my mom worked in the bakery and my sister was in school. In 1951, Paz Estensoro founded the Revolutionary Nationalist Movement and won the presidency of Bolivia. On April 9, 1952, the revolution of 52 started in order to overthrow the Bolivian oligarchy. The main leader was this guy, Paz Estensoro. The fighting days were between April 9 and 11 of 1952. When the revolution started, my family lived in Poznański's house. It happened to be the Pesach week, and my mom had prepared lots of food for the Seder, as the whole family was going to come to our house for the Seder. Our house was located between two fighting factions, and the bullets were flying through the house. Forget the Seder. My parents, my grandmother, my sister, and I huddled down in the long hallway with the stone heads for the 3 days the actual fighting lasted. This was the only place without windows where we could stay away from the bullets flying through the house. My mom got us food while crawling on all fours to the kitchen. My sister was 7 and I was 4 years old. After that scare, my father decided it was time to leave Bolivia. During the revolution of 1952, the Hochschild Company was nationalized along with other companies, which was another important reason for my dad to leave Bolivia. The Hochschild Company had a branch in Peru, so my father got a job at the company there, the Northern Peru Mining Company. It was, however, not located in Lima, the capital, but in the highland of Trujillo, a city located in the north of Peru. Pretty hot, too, very close to the equator. After arriving in Trujillo, my mother, my sister, and I lived in a crummy hotel where the mice were running rampant while my father secured housing for us up in the highland in a small mining town called Samne. The move was particularly hard on my mom, who was for the first time without the support of her extended family, especially that of her mother. On top of that, my grandmother died in La Paz during that time. We missed her terribly. After a few months, my dad finally was able to get us housing in Samne. Samne, you can see the house with the white roof. That was our house. It was all prefabricated homes around there. My sister attended 3rd grade in a little school up in the mountain, which is right up facing me, the mountain. I learned with a private teacher since the school had no kindergarten. Most of the time I spent climbing trees, climbing the mountain behind our house, and catching lizards. After a year in Samne, my parents decided they needed to move to Lima, the capital. So my sister and I would receive better schooling and a Jewish education. The city of Lima was initially a shock to our system. It was noisy, somewhat polluted, and very busy. We had no car, so we had to take buses everywhere. Pickpockets and fleas were a problem. But at the same time, Lima had beautiful gardens and plazas, especially the Plaza de Armas that you see there, and the suburbs were green and well kept. My parents immediately joined the German-speaking Jewish community, which was called the 1870. The synagogue had been founded by German Jews in 1870. It had separate seating for women and men, but had a choir sitting right behind the plants that you see there. So it was sort of a mishmash between Reform, Conservative, and even Orthodox. My sister and I attended the Jewish school Leon Pinello, she in 4th and I in 1st grade. At Leon Pinello, we had an hour of Hebrew and English every day, in addition to all our regular subjects in Spanish. We were off for the main Jewish holidays. We did not learn Tanakh. And in the high school, we added Jewish history. Our Hebrew teachers came directly from Israel and stayed a few years. Occasionally, we had important visitors, like Golda Meir, who visited when she was Minister of Foreign Affairs in Israel. Peru had not allowed Jewish immigration during World War II. Many Jews had come earlier from Eastern Europe at the end of the 19th century and beginning of the 20th. German Jews arrived between 1933 and 1938 to escape the Holocaust. And you can see the numbers there. Jewish population in Lima stands now only at 1,900. But the Jewish community in Lima, when I was a child in the late 50s and 60s, was comprised of about 5,000 people with 3 main synagogues. The largest congregation was the Ashkenazi, and most kids in our school came from that community. The other 2 congregations were the Sephardic and the German, 1870. This was the old 1870 building. They built a new one in 208. Each with their own synagogue, right? Many of the children of the Sephardic and the German community didn't attend the Jewish school. I was the only child of German Jews in my class. After having supervised the kosher food preparation and its delivery at our school, the Leon Pinello, for several years, which was really nice because I could see my mom in the school every time, my mom took a job at the new Jewish old age home, the Afilantis, that had been built from scratch. My mother ran the whole place, kosher meals and all, and here we are right in front of the building when it was finished. My father managed the books for the old age home in addition to now working at a bank as an accountant and keeping the books for the Bnei B'rith, and later also kept the books for the 1870 synagogue. During my 2nd year at university, I met that guy, Harry. Yes, my future husband, who was in the U.S. Peace Corps in Lima. Harry had joined the U.S. Foreign Service, so after we got married, we lived on and off in different countries. In 1976, Harry got assigned to the U.S. Embassy in Lima, Peru, for 3 years. We arrived with our 4-year-old son, Joel, and our 6-month-old baby, Elliot. Our son Joel attended preschool at the same Jewish school, like he said before, Leon Pinello, that I had graduated from. He's in the front, the 3rd from the right. He studied there through 2nd grade and learned to read Hebrew and Spanish in addition to the English he already read at home. When the Nazis had confiscated my grandparents' farm in Silesia in 1936, they had also taken all of my grandparents' silver and jewelry. This is my grandmother. However, my clever grandmother had a pair of silver Shabbat candlesticks bronzed in anticipation of the Nazis' actions. When Harry and I were in Lima again with the U.S. Embassy, we lived in this rented house, and one night thieves broke into the house and took all our silver, except for, guess what? My grandmother's silver Shabbat candlesticks, which she had had bronzed over back in Germany. During our stay in Lima, we enjoyed having my parents close. My mother had stopped managing the old age home in the early 70s. They now own their own little house and a car. It's the little house with the black bars. The car is not that one. That's a more modern picture, but the house looked exactly like that. And there was a nice park across the street. As my parents aged, both my sister and I traveled often to Lima during those years, not only for a visit, but to take care of them. In 1993, my sister helped my parents move to the same old age home my mother had managed 30 years earlier. Both my parents died there. This is the Jewish cemetery in Lima. My sister is putting a stone on my parents' grave. Even though I have not been back to Lima since the unveiling of my parents' graves in the 90s, my experiences of growing up in Lima will always remain a big part of me. On this Shoah Shabbat, I remember and honor my paternal grandparents and their siblings who perished in the Holocaust, my maternal grandparents, and my parents who survived and had the courage and fortitude to start anew in a very difficult environment. And the many people in my extended family and other people's families who perished in the Shoah. Zichronam Levracha, may their memory be a blessing. And finally, I want to leave you with my 5 granddaughters' picture at my eldest granddaughter's Goldie's Bat Mitzvah party in New Jersey last year. You will surely recognize Joel's children in that pic. We will never forget, but we live on. Am Israel Chai. Thank you.
And thank you for sharing your story with us, and actually Joel's story with us at the same time, by extension. It was quite moving. We're now going to move to page 533 for special Kaddish. Page 533. This Kaddish was written by Elie Wiesel to specifically honor those who died during the Holocaust. I'm going to ask this community to rise if you are able. And as you can tell, it is a call and a response. And I'm going to do the Hebrew, and then I'm going to ask this community to do the English. And Joel will be saying the English for us, correct, Joel? Mm-hmm. So please follow along with Joel. We are on page 533. Yitgadal.
Auschwitz.
V'yitkadash.
Lodz.
Shmei Rabbah.
Ponar.
Be'alma divrach hirutei.
Babi Yar.
V'amlik malchutei.
Maidanek.
B'chayechon of Yom HaShoah
Birkenau.
Uv'chayei l'chol Beit Yisrael.
Kovno.
V'agalav Yizman Kariv.
Janauska.
V'imru. Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah Mevarak Leolam Olamei Almaya. Yitbarak V'yishtabak.
Theresienstadt.
V'yitpa'ar V'yitromam.
Buchenwald.
V'yitnaseh V'yitadar.
Treblinka.
V'yitalev V'yitalal.
Vilna.
Shmei Dekudsha Berichu.
Bergen-Belsen.
Le'elah.
Mauthausen.
Min kol birchata v'shirata.
Dachau.
Tushbachata v'nechamata.
Minsk.
Damiran be'alma.
Warsaw.
v'imru amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shmaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. You may be seated. It's my honor to ask Tina DeGan to come forward with some announcements. Tina DeGan. We need a microphone. Let's see, I'll take this. We can get this one going.
I think it's okay.
Did you want the box?
No, I'm going to stand to the side.
Okay, I just wanna make sure.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Shabbat Shalom.
It's great to see you all this evening, and good evening to the people who are at home watching us live. I want to thank Rabbi John and Cantor Joel for this beautiful service of remembrance. And Miriam, thank you for the personal story of your family. It's always moving to hear a first-hand experience. I want to also say thank you to our camera specialist, Lindsay, in the back, and to Austin for helping with sound. I want to thank the Martin family for sponsoring the Oneg this evening. It's in honor of their daughter Carly's bat mitzvah tomorrow. I have two quick announcements, actually 3, but it says 2. We are celebrating Yom HaAtzmaut next Friday night, Israel's 75th Independence Day. Please join us. The service will start at 5:30 p.m., followed by a community celebration at 6:30. There'll be dinner, Israeli dancing, so just register online so we know how many people to expect, and come join the fun. Cantor Joel's having an adult ed class starting on May 1st at 7 p.m. It's called Jews Who Rock. So join us for a survey of Jewish-themed pop songs, as well as an exploration of the immense contributions by Jewish musicians in the rock and roll canon. Do you want to say anything about it?
Sign up online.
And now our gala. It's on May 20th, just a month away. So grab your tickets and join us as we honor Rabbi John and his wife Lisa. Go to our website for more information on sponsorships or having a tribute. There's going to be an auction and other kinds of donations. So please join us. It will be a fun evening with yummy food and much more. So visit our website for more information and find out what else is happening here at Kol Tikva. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Tina. Wonderful announcements as always.
I'm getting used to this.
We take a moment, if you open up your shalom sheets, to count the Omer. We count every day from the second day of Passover. We count for 49 days, and then on the 50th, we arrive at Shavuot. We go from freedom, to revelation. And that revelation are the laws and the ideas that help us become a community. So if you'd like to join me, I'm on page, whatever page this is. It's got a big picture of Joel. Look for that. And below it has a smaller picture of Homer Simpson, because we love to count the Omer with Homer. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al sfirat ha'omer. Blessed are you, eternal our God, the sovereign of all worlds, who has made us holy with your mitzvot and commanded us concerning the counting of the Omer. Hayom shisha asar yom shehem shnei shavuot ushnei yamim la'omer. Today is the 16th day, making 2 weeks and 2 days of the Omer. We now turn to page 598 for the Mourner's Kaddish. Just this afternoon, we laid to rest Vladimir Litvak, remembered by the Litvak family. I'd like to take a moment to mention that he was 94 years old, and he too was affected by the Holocaust. He lived in Russia. His family was told to run because the Nazis were coming. And he got onto a train with his mother and his siblings, and they ran. And at the train station, he went to get some water, and the train left without him. And he had a choice to go back to the village that wasn't too far away, a village where his relatives were, who could protect him, or he could follow the train and find a way to catch up. And at age 13, he followed the train and he caught up and he lived because of it. If he had turned around and gone back to his other relatives, he would have died. He too is a survivor. He too shows us what it means to keep moving forward, no matter what obstacles are thrown in front of you. We also remember Herb Binder, remembered by the Heller and Binder families. Buddy Roche, remembered by the Ames family. B. Kozlowski, remembered by the Kozlowski family. And Myron Crystal, remembered by the Crystal family. We also hold in our prayers those taken by gun violence, those that have passed due to floods, fires, and other natural and unnatural disasters, and those killed in regional conflicts. We also think of those who have yortzites: Mark Axelrod, Esty Alcalay, Norman Berg, Sharon Davis, Sid Fisher, Gus Hermes, Alan Kipnis, Corey Victor Margolis, Fred Neidich, Albert Pass, Perla Plutt, Don Robbins, Benjamin Rosenfeld, Marcia Rothschild, Thea Schuber, Esther Scope, Hinda Lee Sheffer, Esther Spiro, Samuel Steinberg, Marty Weiss, and Esther Weissman. If you have an additional name for our Kaddish, our Yortzeit list, please share it with me now. If you're in the first 7 days of mourning, Shiva, I ask you to please rise. If you're in the first 30 days of mourning, Shloshim, I ask you to please rise. If you're in the first year of mourning, I ask you to please rise. If you're observing a yortzeit, I ask you to rise. These are the mourners in our midst. We rise as a community to show them our love and our support. We are on page 598. Yitgadal v'yikadash shmei Rabba, b'alma divrach hirutei v'yamlech malchutei, b'chayachon v'yomechon v'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael, v'agalav v'zman kari v'imru. Amen. Yehei shmei Rabba mevorak leolam olamei amaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitba'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei d'kudsha barechu. Leila min kol birchata v'shirata, tishbachata v'nechamata, namiran be'alma v'imru. Yehei shlama rabba min shmaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu yaseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'al kol yoshvei tevel v'imru. Amen. May the one who makes peace on high grant peace to all who mourn, to all Israel and to all humankind. And together we say, Amen. Put down your books, put your arms around the people next to you. If you do not know them, ask permission first. I'm going to be sitting out for Kiddush and Amotzi afterwards as Joel leads you.
Ose shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu. ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו amen.
I'm going to hold our Kiddush cup and our challah tonight for the sake of getting us into Oneg in just a moment. So why don't we do a short Kiddush?
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen.
L'chaim.
L'chaim.
The challah. What do we do when we say challah?
Yum, yum,
Yeah,
yum.
point at him. We go yummy, yum, yum. Here we go.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam המוציא לחם מן הארץ בתיאבון.
Come forward and get some challah. Wish somebody Shabbat Shalom who you do not know. And then go into Oneg.
Shabbat Shalom. Hey, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom.